I lost 30 seconds there. Thank you very much. I'm really grateful to be here. And as I listened to the various speakers, I realized that the Great Lakes Conference, everybody wants to be politically correct. So I will try not to be politically correct. So here's the problem. I think most Africans believe in free trade because we've always experienced trade by barter. We were colonized by the British, the French, the Belgians, and so on and so forth. We started getting independence in the 60s. It was fashionable at the time to become leftists, the communists, and have central governments. Then we had military coups and military coups and military coups. And you know, the military, they like centralized government. They like to own everything. So when the military took over these African countries, including Nigeria, government started owning hotels. Government even owned restaurants. Now, if a government owned the restaurant and they owned the hotel and they owned the airline, you can imagine how inefficient that would be and how corrupt the system would be. And as African leaders imitated the colonial masters who ruled them prior to 1960, they wanted to be just like them. And so I likened African leaders to the civil rights struggle in America, the whites versus the blacks. In this case, our leaders are the whites, and the people who vote for them are blacks. And this is the problem we have right now. So when we talk about free trade, let's talk about the fundamental problems that create a problem for us in the first place. The first place, we're very badly led. A lot of people who hold positions in office in Africa should not seek public office. They should probably have psychiatric evaluation first and not seek public office. And that is a serious issue. And if we have people who should be in the mental institutions as our leaders, we should be talking about free trade. We can't be talking about any kind of trade. We should first of all fix our problems. And that is why I don't want to be politically correct. I want to deal with the issues the way they are. Now, free trade is what? Buying and selling, trade by barter. That is fine, I accept it. But if you look at the richest people in Africa, how did they create wealth? They create wealth because they were traders. Most of the richest people in Africa were traders. They didn't invent anything, they didn't create anything. So the next generation of people are admiring folks who made money by seeing the president in the middle of the night, giving import duty exemptions, selling products they think will benefit the poor, but they benefit them and a few others. People who seek public office to create wealth for themselves, not to serve the people who voted them into office. That creates another set of problems. And that is what we need to address. A lot of the African leaders should be toppled from government. They are the cause of the poverty that we have. You take Nigeria, 180 million people. The market is so large, we don't need to export. If you manufacture anything, you grow fish in Nigeria, you would sell it because you have 180 million people. The domestic market is unbelievable. We have oil, we import petrol. We have gas, and we have no light. How does that make any sense? When I was talking to Daniel yesterday, and he didn't understand how you could have gas and how you could have oil, you have no petrol, and then you start to wonder. And I say to all African leaders, the first thing you do, you appoint a minister of common sense in your cabinet. First. That's the first thing you do. Because the mistakes we make no sense. It makes no sense. You have oil and you're poor. And when you're poor, you get hungry and angry, and then you get a gun and a knife, a machete, you try to kill someone. You try to rape someone. You create a problem, and that has to stop. And I was at the MIT the other day giving a speech, and the former Zambian president talked about the Chinese who came to build the railway in Zambia. And he explained how the manual was brought in, and it was in Chinese, and because it was in Chinese, they brought in about 50,000 Chinese to do the work. I said, well, if you had a Ministry of Common Sense and you knew you were going to build a railway 5 years in advance, why didn't you take 3,000 Zambians to China, had them train, acquire the skills, bring them back to build the railway? Why do you give a contract to the Chinese and bring in 100,000 Chinese to Africa to do manual labor, to teach you how to make soup and cook on the side of the street? This is the problem. You know, the problem in Africa defies logic. I sit here and I can't understand why we're poor. We are too rich to be poor. And we are too poor for our leaders to be so rich. It doesn't make any sense. And we have to address the fundamental issue. We have to address the fundamental issue. I believe in free trade, but free trade benefits the masses. Protectionist policy benefits our leaders and their friends and the political associates who make so much money, it makes sense for you not to have free trade. So I ask you one question: which is better, an incompetent leader or a corrupt, competent African leader? Thank you very much.